the same message. I don't want this to get into a political discussion, but I want to make that point that I think, Black Hawk started off a trend where Hollywood studios were less afraid to start taking on board more serious subject matter, so that's a plus. I think many more so-called populist movies should be addressing world problems, not, silly stories. I'm working backwards now. The second question was how I'm seated in Hollywood, and you never crack Hollywood, you never crack the system. So that's the first thing to learn. Don't try and crack the system. Go to a certain extent along with it. I consider myself very fortunate to still be working at that level in Hollywood after all these years, and it's taken 25 years to do that. That's myself and my brother. Okay. First question was, I've forgotten what was the first question? Just in a word, what was it? Oh, and Alien was, pretty special, and so is Blade Runner. That's why we're still here talking about it. And I think that answers the question itself. The fact that I did two does not mean I would love to do another science fiction movie, and I'm continually looking for that. So if anyone's got a science fiction script in a briefcase, give it to him, and then give it to me, and then we can reply officially, otherwise you'll accuse me of stealing it, right? So I'm always looking for science fiction, because the genre, which is a much overused word, is so marvelous because it is, in the best sense of the word, an arena or a universe where anything can happen. The problem about a lot of science fiction is let's call them the writers or the conceiver of most material, which I think is a sign of a great writer. Very early on, you should draw up your rule book, your parameters of what the truth is within the context of a fantasy or a science fiction or a science possibility. Because if you don't do that, the bucket leaks and the story doesn't really work, it all becomes rather bloody silly. And I think the good thing about Alien was a kind of C movie that elevated itself to a B movie because we drew the parameters very firmly, and at onset I stuck within that context of that story. Blade Runner was the same thing. We drew the universe. Within that universe, the possibility of human genetic replication is feasible and can happen. And once you get that down, then you can also then start talking in terms of how are they used. Well, they're used off-world. How is it off-world? Because by now, in this particular world, you start to believe there might be moon-based, there might be Mars-based, and off that, from Mars-based, springboard into the universe. So already just sit there and accept it. And I think that's why those two films kind of work really well. It touches the truth in the context of their own storytelling. A good film is like a good book, and you might go to the shelf and take it off and revisit it. There's not a lot of films I can do that with in my collection or library of material. I tend to see a film once and that's it. So fundamentally we're dealing in a business which is dealing with ephemera or pulp. Pulp's not a bad word. In fact, Quentin Tarantino made a good film called Pulp Fiction, so it's not pulp. That's what it is. That's the kind of business. It's an ephemeral business. Occasionally, a few survive, and the few that survive can be classified as art. That's a tricky word to be using. I think that can be. You can call them art. I think, and with all the people sitting at this table with me, who we all were engaged in making this piece, which I would definitely say is a piece of cinema art.